Hello and welcome to our first ever SAPSAC podcast. Now, anyone who has read or heard the story about the KANNALAND Mayor and the Deputy Mayor is probably shaking their head in disbelief, and they would be absolutely right to do so. So here's the story around that story. Mayor Jeffrey Donson was convicted in 2008 of raping a 15-year-old girl. Now, that incident happened back in 2004. He was given a 5-year prison sentence, but that was reduced to a wholly suspended term of imprisonment, correctional supervision. He was given a 20,000 Rand fine and had to undergo a rehab program for sex offenders. Now, to add insult to injury, his deputy, Werner Meshoa, was also found guilty of sexual assault and statutory rape of a pupil. He was fired as a teacher by the Western Cape Education Department back a couple of years ago, and he's also a convicted fraudster. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how do these two men actually get elected to positions like this in a partnership with the governing party, the ANC, which is in a coalition with this particular party that Donson is? It's the ICOSA party, and they were considering a coalition. What we hear now is that the ANC is reviewing that coalition decision. It's cut its ties with Donson. There's pressure on Donson to actually quit, to not take up this post. He is expected to make an announcement on his political future today. That is, at the time of this recording, Donson is still due to make an announcement, but that is not the issue. The issue of whether he stays or goes is not the problem. For us here at SAPSAC, the issue is, how was this man elected in the first place? And to give us some insight into this, we're chatting today to the president of SAPSAC. She's the director also of the Teddy Bear Foundation and a representative of the children's sector, and somebody who is no stranger to the issue when it comes to protecting our children, and that's Dr. Shaheda Omar. Dr. Omar, good day, and thank you so much for your time. And I think you also are probably listening to the story and going, how on earth does this happen?
Indeed, Uveka. Thank you, and good morning to everybody out there. Absolutely. It is shocking, it's ludicrous, it's disgusting. Not only the disbelief, but the grave concern, I think, for our children, that how can a convicted child rapist be assigned a power of position, authority, and status, both the positions of mayor and deputy mayor? In this day and age, I mean, we have got the child sex offender register, we've got the child protection register, and that convictions are supposed to be included and placed on that register. So in terms of screening and vetting, surely those processes should have been followed, and I think the reality is that now that the political parties are raising their heads around dismissal or resignations, whatever they mean, is still unacceptable. It's just too late. The fact that these people have a history of sexual misconduct, sexual convictions, is totally unacceptable. We cannot allow this kind of positions of power to be allowed. And besides that this seems not to be an isolated incident. It's repeated, because if we go back in time, we find that this is people have been appointed into positions despite their previous convictions.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's happened here as well, Dr. Omar. I believe that he was elected before. Now he's been re-elected. And what's even more worrying about this is not just the fact that, that this has happened. It's not only the fact that his peers thought it was okay to keep him in the party, put him up for the position of mayor, but the fact that the governing party, the ANC, like you say, we have all kinds of ways of figuring out, or there are ways to, there's a sex offenders register. They should have known his history. He's not just some unknown who came into this. And the fact that the public would vote for a party, this ICOSA party, knowing that he heads the party as well. What is the message that is being sent out here on all of those levels?
so, Uveka. You know what? The strongest message sent out there is that crime pays, that people in positions of power get rewarded despite the criminal offenses, that it's glossed over, it's ignored. But also the other message is that there isn't sufficient voter education. The information that is relayed or represented out there is not clear, and of course, what we look at is that the voters that have put him in or voted for him to be in this position, what does it say about them? It says that they are also colluders, that they are equally guilty in putting him and his deputy into these positions of power. They are perpetrators by default, and I think this is what we want to say, that people out there, the voters out there, have failed our children. The political party has failed our children. So the people that have been instrumental in this whole process are equally guilty and perpetuating the cycle of violence.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is not like this hasn't, that this isn't an issue that has actually only just come up now. We've been dealing with gender-based violence. We've been dealing about crimes against women and children, sexual crimes. So how many years now? And yet you have a government that even uses it as part of its campaign. You have a ruling party. We are coming up to 16 days. I mean, we're going to be in the thick of it. And it's mind-boggling for me. It's so mind-boggling that the ANC would even consider going into a coalition with a party like this. Not that we're talking about the politics of it, but surely it's either that, again, it goes to the sentiment and some of the feeling out there that all they do is talk. All we do is talk. And it worries me as a person that the governing party at a time like this is actually so unaware, or it doesn't care, or does it just lie when it puts out these campaigns over 16 days? And it worries me then who is going to take up the fight. You and I as ordinary people can do it, but we can't create the laws. We can't create the punishments. They are the people who can create it. And this is what they do. That is actually scary. It's more scary than worrying.
Uveka, and what you've highlighted is the issue of accountability. I mean, who is accountable here, and who should assume that accountability? Who in their right minds would follow a grown man who started a relationship with a 15-year-old, and not just an ordinary man, the mayor of the municipality? I mean, this is not something that we can just sit back and then allow. And I think if we look at the whole structure, we talk about accountability, but it's hypocritical, and it's not only sad and disappointing, but the fact that we're putting people in positions of power, people who have conducted the most heinous of crimes, and we're allowing that. It speaks a lot to the credibility, the reputation of the government, the accountability, and of course, we realize that, like you say, we come into the 16 days of activism, but if we just go back, on Saturday was the International Day, Children's International Day, and 67 years into that, what have we achieved? We celebrate all these, protection days, gender-based violence against children and women, and yet we are failing our children. As a society, we have definitely failed our children.
And like we say, we highlight the ordinary citizens who put these people into power as well, Dr. Omar. And you speak of those who have failed. In this case, who has actually failed this community? Who has failed the country? Because there are so many players here. Who would, is it the justice system? Is it the governing party? Is it the people who have actually voted for them? And are there more players? Are there more people that we can hold accountable for how something like this would actually be allowed to happen? It didn't just happen by mistake. It was allowed to happen.
Indeed, and I think the fact that who should we hold accountable, definitely it's more than one party. It should be opposition parties, it should be the Department of Justice, it should be communities, it should be the broader society. And I think if we look at even political parties should absolutely forbid child rapists to be candidates. And if there are coalitions, other parties should reject this outrightly, that these candidates even show up on the registers if they have any integrity and commitment to child protection and to combat gender-based violence. Once again, if we don't take action, we're going to find that everything is going to fall apart, disintegrate, and that's what we are facing right now, and losing credibility in this whole voting structure, and just looking up at people in positions of power in terms of issues of trust, in terms of accepting that people that are put into positions are being voted are actually squeaky clean and display or demonstrate integrity and respect.
And this is an absolute shocker. I mean, when it comes to politics, very little surprises us here in South Africa, Dr. Omar. I'm sure as a voter, but this is an absolute shocker for two men to hold these positions like this, having been convicted. It wasn't just rumors, it wasn't just claims, they were convicted. And let me just tell you, I just want to read what Donson has actually said in response to all the inquiries, and that in itself will give us an idea of the mindset of this man, and probably those that he whose eyes he pulls the wool over, saying recent and ongoing media inquiries about my 2008 conviction on statutory rape and indecent assault have greatly startled and disrupted my family and me. Although the event is years old, it haunts me still, and mortal wounds are bleeding again. That's from Donson. I mean, sounds to me like he's playing such a victim. He's playing the victim here, and I absolutely cannot believe that they are startled that this would come up. They are startled that this would be an issue. It's disrupted him and his family. I mean, I think if anybody could get their hands on this man, he's not going to be safe.
Indeed, and I think the one question that one needs to look at it, where does this leave us now? We talk about commitment to child rights and combating gender-based violence. That all seems to be lip service from those people who are holding authority and in positions of power. It's not just a news story, this. I think we need to realize that it's not sensationalism, but it's about children's rights here, children's future, children's safety and protection. And if we just look, if this is a measure of how our society is functioning, it is totally unacceptable. And by him assuming the role of victim is disgusting. And of course, talking about it now and reflecting on his past or his previous mistakes, it was not a once-off incident. There were several incidences that he was found guilty of. So I think that is something that one needs to realize, by him crying out for sympathy, reaching out to people now, it's just unacceptable. We cannot listen to this kind of nonsense any longer.
Well, obviously the ANC, it might be too little too late, but it has to set an example here in terms of cutting ties. It's got to put its political ambitions in the backseat. We can only hope that that's what's going to happen, although it's already sent out the wrong message anyway. But Dr. Omar, what are the takeaways from this as we wrap up? What are the takeaways from this? What lesson is this teaching us here in South Africa about, what is allowed, what happens when we let things slip through the cracks, or like we say, when we allow people to take up positions like this? What needs to be done so this never happens again?
Well, I think firstly there needs to be more rigor in when people are applying for these posts. The screening needs to be thorough because there are screening measures put into place, the police clearance, the sex offender register, the child protection register. But in my discussions with other colleagues from the children's sector, we felt that more additional screening needs to be also ensured. We're looking out for any pathology. So people holding these kind of positions need to undergo that kind of rigor. Furthermore, if we look at awareness raising and conscientizing, so there needs to be conscientizing of your voter on the street. They need to understand, and all the information needs to be accurately represented, because I think this is a misrepresentation and people do not have the necessary information in order to make those informed decisions. So that's the one thing that we also need to focus on. Well, I think coming from the children's sector, listening to children's voices is critical. And we talk about the rights of children, the responsibilities of children, and our rights and responsibilities towards children. So giving children a platform where children can also have a say in, and I'm not saying just your young child, but a child from the age of 16 who could speak more to the political parties, to the political figures, and express their sentiments around that as well. So we need to also include children's voices. I think we need to be more inclusive in bringing children's voices to the fore.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Dr. Omar. And I think we'll be watching our politicians, we'll be watching our leaders, people put into positions of such responsibility, because it is time that we don't let such monsters actually try, take up positions and be paid and have paid positions where they can actually abuse those positions as well. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.